How's it going, guys? Hope you're doing well. Welcome to this episode of the Phil Talk Sports podcast, the first ever simulcast of the podcast, both on my channel and on the Charger Dude 95 YouTube channel. My co-host Nick Rice here. He had a great idea to put this episode on both our channels because for people that love Nick's content, when he's not over there working on the Dream Season Football League, he's over here talking sports with me a lot of the time. So I want to welcome his audience, and Nick, thanks for being here, man.
Thanks, man, but not all the time, okay? Because we still one of these days got to talk about either Sandlot or talk about one of those other good films. So, but yeah,
Yes.
mostly we'll get into the NFL and NBA and stuff like that. But yeah, glad to be back.
Yeah, definitely. I do have other guests on for the new audience. I just want to let everybody, I'm going to put all the cards on the table so you know what you're getting if you click on one of these. But nobody is on this show more than Nick. He is easily on 75% of the episodes. So if there's a rare one that he's not on, Nick will be back within the next episode or two. So
And
this is what the normal episode usually looks like.
And by the way, for folks that are tuning in and thinking, "Wow, I finally figured out who that face is to that voice I've heard for all these years." Yep, there he is, and we weren't lying. He's from Florida. He's not from down the street. We somehow 3 time zones across figure it out.
Yeah, between me, you, and Hank, I always said if we made a podcast, just the three of us, I would call it 3 time zones because that's always what you have to coordinate for us to talk together. No Hank on this episode, but you've seen him on previous ones. The link will be in the description on Nick's channel to see all the previous ones, and you can see what Hank looks like too if you want to, for the people that to watch those as well. But we're going to get right into this. We're mostly talking football today, retirements, free agency signings, and of course we have some more news on the college football game that's about 5 months away. Can't wait. But we're going to start kind of where we started right before the Super Bowl, actually. We're going to talk some Jason Kelce because he retired for real this time. There's a lot that was said 2 or 3 weeks ago when it was put out there that Jason Kelce is going to retire. That was never official. He took some time. He walked it back. But now it has come out officially that Jason Kelce is retired. And I was going to wear the jersey again, but I'm like, I just did that. I'm going to wear something different this time. But there's not much more that can be said that, he's the first ballot Hall of Famer. I'm actually petitioning that Jason Kelce is the first no ballot Hall of Famer. Don't make him wait 5 years. Just put him in tomorrow. What are we waiting for? That's how much I think this guy should be loved and appreciated. There's been some fun banter with Eagles Twitter of like where he ranks as an all-time Eagle. He can't be any lower than 3. It's like Chuck Derrick, him, Brian Dawkins, for the real old heads like a Steve Van Buren type. But he's right up there. Reggie White as well. Like he's, I think, the biggest hater of him, which I don't know that he has many, could not put him lower than the top 5. But and I think it's important to note as we talk about Jason Kelce retiring, with him, a D lineman teammate, Fletcher Cox, also hanging it up. So that's 2 great Eagles that, while they were older and while critics will say they've lost a step, they'll be missed in that locker room. They'll be missed on the field. And it's gonna take a while to really sink in, and it probably won't until the season starts that these guys aren't an Eagle Green anymore.
Yeah, even if the critics are right, which I would beg to differ, they lost one out of a bunch of steps that they had to give. I mean, these were some outstanding players, and especially Jason Kelce that we were talking about. He reminds me a lot of Philadelphia's leader on the offensive end, like a Brian Dawkins was on defense. Just an emotional leader and a guy that I don't think it was coincidence that once he figured out the league, because the guy was not a Hall of Famer after 4 years, but somehow he just slowly developed in as much off the field and as much in the locker room as on the field. The guy became the superstar that he is. Usually, and Jason Kelce is kind of had a different path. Usually, pretty quickly, like, oh, this guy's going to be special. I'd like to get your thoughts on that, Phil, but I don't believe that even Eagles fans felt he would be this good after a few years. But he really has become one of the greatest offensive players they've ever had.
Yeah, I mean, he came in at a time where before him was Jamal Jackson at center, who was very good, above average. I don't think has like the Pro Bowls and the All Pros that you would like expect to see for a guy like that. But he was coming in to end a guy that was extremely solid, if nothing else, in Jamal Jackson. And like you said, not right away, didn't necessarily do anything wrong, but didn't wow you immediately. It is funny. I've heard like Jason Kelce talk, Jalen Hurts talk, that he snaps the ball with such velocity that and like Michael Vick has said this, Nick Foles has said this, like he has like, it's like a fastball every time. So like that probably take some getting used to, especially as a young player. Like, who's this guy coming in here firing the ball in every time? Like, which is why if you look at Jalen Hurts from the past 2 years, like he's almost in like a squatting
Yeah,
position
he's like this.
because of how fast that thing's coming out. And as someone who played very little center/long snapper in my very limited playing career, I respect the hell out of that, because the fact that you can do that every single time and keep that consistently is, hats off to him. But, this is a guy that walked on at Cincinnati, right? Wasn't a huge recruit. However, the Eagles offensive line coach fell in love with this guy immediately. Before he was at the Eagles, he was at the Colts, and he apparently looked at him even at Cincinnati and said, "That's my next Jeff Saturday," which is, if Jason Kelce's not the greatest center of our lifetime, it's him or Jeff Saturday, in my opinion. So he wanted Andy to grab him in like the third round, and he made him hold out and wait and sweat it out. They eventually got him, I believe, in the sixth, and he's just been the phrase I always like to use actually comes from John Dornbos, our old long snapper: be consistently good and occasionally great. And I think that was Jason Kelce a lot early on. And then you get to the point, like a little bit of X's and O's here. I've never seen, you always talk about pulling guards, right? That's always something that happens on a running play. He perfected like the pulling center that I don't think many teams really do much at all. But you see plenty of these plays where Kelce's pulling with everybody else, and like this, his deceptive speed that he had for, from a center's perspective, I thought was incredible. And it's just like, all that aside, it's the locker room leader, like you said. It's the vibes. It's just this like family man that can also chug 3 beers at once. Like he could be the next Dos Equis guy, is the most interesting man in the world. He's just an interesting dude. Him and his brother both, right? Just really good vibes guys. And you talked about this a little bit in our group chat. Like, you're not fully sold on this. You think we might see this guy again? He's already said on his podcast that he's almost regretting it a little bit already.
Yeah, I mean, I did pull the quote a little out of context because he said, "Man, I regret it, and it really bums me out that I'm not playing." But the sentence before that, he said, "I'm happy with my decision." So I conveniently left that out. In the end, I think if I was a betting man, I'd go that Kelce will be retired, even if it's plus money. But man, my thought process, and I had a similar, I thought, just to pull the curtain back, that last year I had that hairy brain idea that Bill Belichick is going to wait a year and then retire. Like the last time we saw him was last year. And so far, I think I'm working on house money with that prediction too. And then with this prediction, I think if he didn't have a brother in the league on a championship caliber franchise, maybe. But I think seeing his own brother succeed and seeing Saquon join the team and all that, I got to think there's a 5% chance that he comes back. I don't know about Fletcher Cox. He might just hang it up.
No, that's a guy that lost. I would say Fletcher Cox, and no disrespect, because we all love the guy too. He lost more steps than Kelce lost. I think Kelce, nobody, these stats that came out about this guy, like there was a point like either last year or late into the year before, it's like he hadn't given up a sack since like Obama was president. There was all these crazy offensive line stats out there about him. But yes, I think the conversation about him, I think what he'll do, because a lot of these guys, you see him on like Rich Eisen, like a year and a half out of the league, and he always asks, "Do you miss playing?" And they almost all say the same thing. It's like, sure, you miss it, but I miss the locker room. I miss the team. I miss the guys. I think he'll just throw that passion into cheering on his brother, who probably doesn't have quite as many years left as people might think. I'd give Kelce, the other Kelce, maybe 3 years more at the rate that he gets.
I think that's even generous.
I think that is generous. Yeah,
a year or two.
Mm-hmm. I think 3. I think the over/under is 3, and I would go under for sure. But I think he will, much like the Super Bowl, much like the playoff games after the Eagles got knocked out. He'll be shirtless with a beanie on, drinking beers. I think he'll just put that all that. It's kind of like if you stop playing whatever sport you're playing and you find a way to like coach or help out younger kids with it. Like, it takes a little bit of that. That's where a lot of coaches come from. They can't play the game anymore. so they want to be around the game. I don't know that I see him coaching necessarily, but I just think he'll enjoy being around Andy Reid and Travis Kelce. Not that he's never not welcome with the Eagles. I mean, if they go on a Super Bowl run this year, don't be surprised if he's the assistant to the offensive line coach on the sideline by then. But other than that, I think he's just going to enjoy his life. Dude is made for TV. The podcast does really well. He might show up on either Eagles pre and post game shows or just pop into other things. He's not going to go away for people that, I think are worried about that. I think we're going to see plenty of him still, and I look forward to that. I look forward to seeing him not have to waver the highs and lows of his own season and just enjoy football for what it is now.
Yeah, man. Where am I going to get my new news?
New news.
Them from that was the greatest with Andy Reid. Yep. The only thing on the field that Travis still has to achieve in terms of legacy, because I don't think for a tight end having an extra ring or two makes really much of a difference at all. We consider Tony Gonzalez top 5 all time, and he didn't even sniff a conference championship game.
Right.
Tony G is the all-time tight end receiving leader. Travis Kelce is 4,000 yards away, and so that's 4 years, unless Travis has a crazy yardage season, at least.
That's 4 years at
stuff
least.
He's going to get.
Sure.
Yeah. But the regular season stuff, it's like, is he really going to last that much longer? But yeah, I think there's a small chance Jason comes back, but I wouldn't count on it. And kudos to him, man, no matter what. A decade in the league, one of the anchors of a great championship caliber team. He made it to 2, won 1, anchored some of the great running games in recent memory. Philly was yet again a top 5 running game last year, despite, Jalen Hurts a great, runner for a quarterback, but not necessarily a Derrick Henry or a Saquon Barkley back there. So it is kind of ironic that he probably won't be pushing behind one of the best running backs they've had in a long time, but still an incredible career, and hats off to, a class personified, grade A person, Jason Kelce.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things, if there's that 5% is going to be like, man, we got Saquon Barkley, like me blocking for that guy is going to make, because as much as I like Swift and he ended up signing with the Bears, we're going to talk some of these free agent moves here in a minute. He was good. He was hot and cold. When he was really good, he was really good. And when he wasn't, he was average, which he probably settled in like right outside the top 10 overall running backs for the year, probably around like 12 if I had to guess. Good back for sure. But Saquon Barkley with a line like we've had in recent years is definitely something that's got to be enticing. It almost makes you wonder, while making this decision, if Howie Roseman was like, hey, man, we love you. You do what you want to do. But just so you know, this is what I got cooking. Just, I want you to have all the facts. Maybe that changes something. I don't know. But another part of me, and this is just me, like, I always try to humanize athletes whenever I can, because I feel like other people don't do it enough. Not necessarily us, but just other people when they talk about it. If he's getting out healthy with his family, like, I'm not saying the guy's not banged up, but if, like, he can live the rest of his life just 100% normal the way he is now, that's worth it, I think, because if they go on any sort of run, he'll be involved. They did the same thing with Brian Dawkins, in 2018 when they won. So I don't think the FOMO is going to be there in the beginning, fear of missing out, right? But I think over time, he'll just be more and more comfortable with his decision, especially 4, 5, 6 months from now. It's like, couldn't come back if I wanted to. I'm not in NFL shape. That's another thing that it'll come down to for sure.
I think part of the argument for him really retiring, on top of what you said, they really, and I hate to say this, weren't necessarily that close by January this year, where I think Jason thinks, Saquon comes in and you guys should be better. But, I don't know. Part of me is like, I don't know what to make of how the last month went for Philadelphia. But in general, it wasn't like, by the time before the wild card game happened, nobody was saying, oh, yeah, they'll make the Super Bowl. People were just saying, yeah, they'll win a playoff game. People didn't expect them to lose to
they'll
Tampa.
fix it. They'll right the ship a little bit. I think it's important to point out,
Saquon
too.
helps, but does Saquon make you a Super Bowl champion, even if Jason Kelce comes back? Maybe he thinks that. Maybe he doesn't. I'm not quite sure.
Right. I do think it's important to note that had the Eagles beat the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, I'm pretty convinced Jason retires on the podium right there. He came
Probably.
back last year to run it back. So he's
Yeah.
really that extra year he kind of already used. Um, but now we're transitioning anyway to the Barkley talk. So we're gonna go into NFL free agency stuff. I don't know about you. This is the most action-packed 48 hours to start
Oh
free
yeah.
agency that I ever remember. And let's get
Dude,
the
even more.
yeah,
The whole week has been crazy.
let's get the Saquon Barkley stuff. There's the talk about the tampering with Barkley talking to him, before they're supposed to, but like all these deals are lined up before clearly I don't mean to talk like,
No,
oh,
no.
everyone's
Did you
doing it,
know,
so it's
Phil?
fine.
Did you know people come and negotiate and finalize deals in the first 2 minutes? At 12 to 12:02, everybody talks and figures it out during that 2 minute period.
I mean, I thought I was efficient and effective at what I do for a living, not the way these guys do it apparently. But
That's right.
again, I don't want to talk like, oh, everybody does it, because that's bullshit. That's never an excuse for you to do something that's wrong if other people do something that's wrong. It's not how I
Mhm.
operate. That's not how anybody should operate. But what I am saying is, and apparently Saquon has already come out and said no. Coach Franklin misunderstood what I was telling him. My agent was there. Blah blah blah. I don't think anything huge will come from this. But if they find this is truly what happened and we get docked a draft pick or two, like, all right, like you screw it. You still got your guy. So if anything, it's worth that. I gotta say, overall, I was surprised by this move. One, because most people don't make these big splashy running back moves, and like the last time we did that was DeMarco Murray, and that was an absolute dumpster fire of a decision. I do think this will go better. I think this is a line that'll keep him healthy. This is a line that he's not even the number one offensive weapon, which he's been the entire time in New York. And I think to Giants fans that are mad at him, I would say you had a chance to
Tiki
re-sign him
Barber.
or Daniel Jones, and you went with Daniel Jones. So the Tiki Barbers of the world could just chill for a little bit, in my opinion.
Dead to me? Come on, dude. Really?
Well,
It's
he
one
fired
thing if
back.
they both. What do you say?
So Barkley fired back and he's like, dude, you didn't like me when I
Yeah.
was in New York. So what do I care what you think about me now? But yeah, whatever you were gonna say.
Silly, silly. And it's one thing if it's like Giants and Eagles offered the same deal and they went to his division rival. It was super obvious the
Mhm.
Giants wanted him out.
Right.
But either way, I think they're just pissed that now Philadelphia can kind of run all over him. But with that said, I do think that there's a little bit to this because, I mean, I'm not privy to the tampering thing, but the rumor is that, Howie Roseman talked to Saquon before, the opening day of free agency. That to me seems like a step too far. If other players like, hey, you should come here, maybe the coach chit chats, but like if the GM who's probably talking contract with him, that does
Mhm.
feel a little far. But like you
Right.
said, I don't think anything serious is going to come out of this. But it's a great deal, and I just feel bad for running backs now because Saquon Barkley 10 years ago would have gotten triple the money and double the
Yeah.
years. But
Right.
now, even though he's injury prone, so I feel bad for him. Derrick Henry going for 8 a year for Baltimore and other things. Like
Mhm.
Saquon kind of got paid by running back standards
Yeah.
nowadays. And, 13 does not kill you if you're Philadelphia. So I think it's a
No.
win-win for everybody.
I think it's important to note too that everybody's salary cap went up $35 million this year. So like
Yeah.
even teams that didn't have money have to go in the NBA, and guys like, you know, off the bench guys were making, 22 million a year in the NBA. This is kind of not quite the equivalent of that, because the way the NBA's thing went up, like, oh, we want to, gradually give you a little more each year. And they're like, no, just dump 60 extra million in our bank accounts. And like that didn't just screw up free agency, to which they still haven't recovered for the most part. But yeah,
Yeah.
so
Well,
that's the
to
Barkley
that point,
thing.
Phil, yeah,
Mhm.
real quick to that point, the Chargers were 55 million under the cap or over the cap before
Mhm.
they added the money. We cut Mike Williams, restructured two guys, a couple $1 million. We're in the clear.
Right.
I
It's
mean,
that simple.
it helped us more than anybody.
Right. So let's talk a few other signings here. What surprises you? Again, the quickness of it, and maybe it's just nowadays, like maybe people cut out a lot of the BS. Like maybe when they do call Saquon's agents, like, hey man, This is the number. How close to this number are you willing to get? Oh, and I do want to throw this in about him too. New York fans are mad because like he was born in Brooklyn. He's a New York guy. He went to high school in Pennsylvania. He has just as much tie. He went to Penn State. He has just as much ties to Pennsylvania as he does New York. But that's the final note on that. But again, this 48 hours of free agency, it was just like boom, boom, boom. Like they just dropped I don't know how they were able to tweet all these out. From like Schwarber and everybody, the NFL Twitter accounts and stuff this quickly. But aside from the Barkley thing, what is the biggest surprise signing that you've seen so far?
In terms of surprise, I would say probably the sheer amount of money that Kirk Cousins got in Atlanta. But I actually have two notable things, kind of surprises, but to me, this was the narrative of free agency. This is the big takeaway, and they tie in together. First, Dallas was the only team that went 72 hours without a single free agent contract. They, re-signed a couple of their own guys, but any outside contracts, they were the only team in the NFL. Skip Bayless saying, all in, my explicative. And, it was hilarious considering that Dallas was talking about how we really got to do, like Micah Parsons and all these guys are talking about, we have to be all in this year. Hilarious how all out they have been in the free agency. And Derrick Henry got picked up by the Ravens. I think a terrific signing, considering that, Baltimore, technically is improving on their strength, but they really needed an upgrade at the running back position. We picked up Gus Edwards, the Chargers did.
Okay.
But how these two tied together is that Derrick Henry allegedly was not even contacted by Dallas, and they got rid of Tony Pollard.
Right.
So I forget who they picked up to replace him, but he's not Tony Pollard, and he's not Ezekiel Elliott either. So, if you don't mind checking that real quick. So, Dallas, to me, doing nothing but twiddling their thumbs for 3 days is typical Dallas and also very tragic to what this year could be for them. And then secondly, Derrick Henry, that is a big addition. They do have to get rid of Odell. They got to get rid of a couple other guys. But Baltimore, I think, could end up being the number one seed again because of Derrick Henry running the ball. I love that guy.
Yeah, and Tony Pollard went to Tennessee too, which is kind of funny how that switches around.
That is weird. Yeah.
But so what are you more surprised? Because the second part of this, there's no money to worry about. But did the Kirk Cousins to Atlanta surprise you more than Russell Wilson to Pittsburgh? Because to me, that's the only team that Russell, I think, had a chance to be like the guy immediately in. And maybe somebody like Tomlin is a good move for him, because what happened with Sean Payton and I just thought the egos clashed. I think when Sean Payton used to be extremely likable in New Orleans from where I sit, but the second he went to Denver, he felt like the God's gift of football kind of thing, and he had his agenda, and Russ has his, I'm might as well be part owner of the team. He's been talking to Caleb Williams' people, I guess, but they clashed way too much, and I just, Tomlin is a whole nother animal with that, and I think if this is going to work, it's only going to work.
This is the place that would work.
Yes, definitely.
Maybe it surprised me a tiny bit because of all the talk about how Pittsburgh is committed to Kenny Pickett, kitten mittens. To me, I get it. Sean Payton's a big ego. I get it. The Broncos, people wanted to rave about how much talent Denver has. My goodness. This was the least talented Broncos team I've seen in a long time on the offensive end. And I've been a Charger fan for a long time, seeing, back when they had DT, rest in peace, and Peyton Manning. And then before then with Noshawn and, all Brandon Marshall and all those guys. This is the least talented Broncos offense I've seen in a long time. But with that said, all that in mind, Russell Wilson still was not good.
He sucked,
especially his first year. He was decent, I guess, in year two.
Yes.
So I think Pittsburgh's getting a guy that Denver was desperate to get rid of and is a big name without a big game anymore. And I think Pittsburgh, while they improve from maybe the worst quarterback situation in the league, they are still a below-average passing game, a below-average quarterback, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but I think Pittsburgh is still they have a clear ceiling there with Russell Wilson at quarterback. I'd be shocked if they win more than 11 games, even with Mike Tomlin.
Right, and I mean, but if you're Pittsburgh, it's a no-brainer. You're paying him $1.2 million. Like Denver's
Oh
got to
yeah,
eat the rest of that. So for that amount, there almost should have been a slight bidding war for him for the teams at the bottom. But like Pittsburgh isn't at the bottom; they just feel like they are. But they still managed to win 8-9 games. Still managed to
they
get in the
won 10
playoffs.
last year. Isn't
Yeah,
that crazy?
it's just what they do. So a couple other ones I wanted to mention: Gabe Davis going from Buffalo to Jacksonville. That excites me as a former UCF Knight, getting to come home and I listened to his interview. His big thing was like maybe he was just done with the cold, being a Florida kid his whole life. Like I wanted to come back to Florida. He didn't specifically say Jacksonville. Like if Miami or Tampa called, he maybe would have listened a little bit. But like he seems over the moon to be in Jacksonville. So that was an interesting one for me. Another Eagles, the Barkley thing took a lot of the headlines, but they also signed Bryce Huff, defensive end from the New York Jets. And like 20 minutes before we went on air here, they signed the Buccaneers Levante David linebacker as well. So Eagles have been made some.
Yeah, Devin White, you guys picked him up too. So
That's what
awesome
I had
pickup.
the names wrong. Devin, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what you're
Yes.
referring to. Yeah,
Yes, but
Philly, man, I'm telling you. Oh man, Nick Sirianni, say what you want about him, but he's making moves.
yeah, I assume they're done at this point because they just came out swinging and throwing the cash like that scene in Wolf of Wall Street where he's got fun coupons. Like that just seems to
That's
be.
right.
I don't think we overpaid for anybody necessarily. Not like a ridiculous amount or anything.
Nick
But
Sirianni said, "I'm not leaving." All
I'm
right.
not leaving exactly. If I
And
do, I'm going kicking and
right
screaming.
on that note, Nick Sirianni, say what you want about him. John Harbaugh reminds me a little bit of Jim Harbaugh, sorry, of the Chargers. I have to get used to that now.
Right.
Even though the Chargers, after the salary cap bump, were 25 over, yeah, they got rid of Mike Williams, but they very quietly picked up Hayden Hurst at tight end, Gus Edwards at running back. I don't remember this busy a free agency in a while, and that was when we had money to burn. So Jim Harbaugh, I said my piece about how I'm skeptical about him long term, but man, players gravitate to this guy. So we're nickeling and diming guys for veteran minimums,
Right.
and people can't wait. They're flocking to the Chargers. So watch out for us next year. We just got to pick up a receiver because outside of Keenan Allen, our receiving core is bad. So we just got to find somebody there.
What do you
And
think?
there's a lot of rideouts still available.
Yes,
So
definitely. And
we
then
totally could.
the draft too as well. If you get one of those guys that pop, that's ideal because of just what little you'd be paying them. What do you
Right.
think of the Baker Bucks deal? I think that's just a classic case of it fits right now. Like you're what we need and we're what you need, and it might not be the full 3 years, but you get another year or two to be the man around here. You got future Hall of Famer Mike Evans re-signed, and I think Chris Godwin's still there for at least another year or two. So we'll see what happens there. They are probably someone that needs a difference maker at running back. But
Yeah.
I like the Baker thing. I think it's just a flat old fashioned fit in my opinion.
It's a fit. They both need each other because
Yes.
if I was a GM, I would be closing my eyes and grimacing, $100 million for Baker Mayfield. But like you said, they need each other. And if Baker is able to, go out the rest of the contract and succeed and make the playoffs again, I mean, we're all winners as NFL fans. But, I'm a little skeptical of that. I thought this was a good year, maybe next year, but soon enough, they're gonna have to get rid of the guys. Baker's gonna have to improve. But shout out to him turning things around in the NFL.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's someone that could have gone into the good. Really, what happened? I think when he ended up on the Rams, because the Panthers thing obviously didn't work out because playing for the Panthers doesn't work out for anybody these days. But when he ended up on the Rams and had just a team that was together, a coaching staff that mattered, like, you saw the difference immediately. And then for him to go to the Bucks, while we were on the negative end of that at the end of the playoffs, like you could see, and that's a very winnable division too. I think the Falcons think the same thing. That's why, like, might as well go out and get Kirk Cousins because this is he can't be worse than Desmond Ritter. I'm not convinced anybody can be worse than Desmond Ritter in modern day times. And he is actually just signed with the Cardinals, I saw. So good luck with that. I don't know if that means you're going to play. You can sit behind Kyler Murray. If Kyler Murray's going to get off the Xbox long enough to play, we'll have to see. But But yeah, this is all in 48 hours, and we have like 3 pages of signings, and I'm just trying to hit the big ones here. Pretty crazy in my opinion.
Yeah, did you ever see the Johnny Manziel documentary?
I did.
On Netflix.
Yeah.
So what's weird, and forgive me for all the Baker fans out there, but Johnny Manziel does remind me a little of Baker Mayfield. Similar personality, similar high draft pick and high status with a lot of expectations to join a losing franchise and build a winner right away. But the difference is Baker Mayfield, and we're all happy that Johnny Manziel is better now in a stable life and he has good surrounding people. Baker, he ate a lot of crap for years after things flamed out for him. And as you said, the Panthers thing was a disaster. Shout out to, the Rams and, now the Bucks for giving him another chance. And he's turned things around. That's a lot easier said than done to show up and fan bases and coaching staffs are saying, if you fail now, you're going to be out for good. Like your livelihood is on the line. And he figured it out. And shout out to Baker Mayfield.
I think Baker Mayfield is Johnny Manziel with a work ethic. Because even in that interview, Johnny was like, in college, he's like, I partied my ass off, and then I was still winning. So I thought that would work because that's all I knew.
Right.
And because the dude's a very athletic, he has a similar skill set to Baker. Baker's an overall bigger dude, can probably take more hits than Johnny was going to be prepared to do. But Johnny played in USFL and he didn't look great in Canada. He didn't look great in the USFL. He didn't look great anywhere unless he had that Aggie on his helmet. So it's just, I don't know to me, that's the biggest difference is the work ethic that Baker has, and it's extremely commendable. And, as an Eagles fan that lives in Florida, though, I'm happy they got their guy for a little bit. This is a guy that flat out that team will play for. And in a very winnable division, that's all you want.
And I'm happy Mike Evans is back too, giving him a great big, athletic target to throw to.
Yeah. And for Bucs fans out there, you better be sending Christmas cards to Mrs. Evans, because I think when all those deals came in, I saw the story. She just looked at him and was like, why don't we just stay in Tampa? Like, our whole life is here. And, happy wife, happy life. He was like, great idea, sweetie. And then they signed. So that's basically, that's how that story's been written that I've seen. But I'm glad to see.
That's not the first time or the last time, I'm telling you,
I mean, it shouldn't be that hard of a twist to be like, why don't we just live in Florida? No state tax, weather's great, 75% of the year. It's not a hard sell. And Baker even he said all the reasons he signed with Tampa during his interview, and the GM is sitting there. He's like, and the no state tax, which definitely helps. When you look at the money, you can afford to take a little less because you're bringing home more. Which I always wonder, in the NBA terms, that works for the Miami Heat, but it never works for my Magic that way. Even though we're both in Florida and you get the same, Heat culture, I guess.
Not until recently. All right. Yeah. Shout out to Boncaro. He should be able to change things there.
Yeah, things are looking good. Currently in the 5 seed. Currently, the play-in is not something we may have to worry about, which is, as a Magic fan, that's exceeds my expectations for the year. So before we get out of here, luckily, we're in a very fortunate situation with news these days. We'll probably end any episode that the two of us are in together just talking about EA College Football 25 and some of the newer information that we had come out. I mean, I think the last time we spoke, that teaser trailer dropped, which didn't show much. It was just a recognition that, yes, it's happening. The full reveal is in May. And since then, we've had little bits here and there. I think some of the biggest news is out of the 11,300 and something players that could potentially opt in, we only know of one that has opted out, and that is Arch Manning, backup quarterback of all people. And I said, you can go back and watch our last episode. There will be somebody that gets bad advice that thinks he's too good for the $600, and why it's him, I don't know. He explained, I just want to focus on football. I don't know if someone didn't tell him, you got to click a button on an app and then hit send, and that's all you got to do. I don't know what he thought. Did he think he had to fly to LA and get face scanned? And I don't know. And people were ripping him. He's like, I'd rather play my football on a field. And it's like, well, you're the backup. You're not really playing on the field right now. This is just weird to me. I could certain players in college be worth more $600 for their likeness? Of course. And there is going to be around 100 players that sign extra deals that get to promote the game either when it comes out or shortly before it comes out. I wouldn't have been shocked if he got picked for one of those deals, but
I'd be
it's
shocked if he didn't.
right. And now we obviously won't, but he would have been if there's 100 of those to give out, he's clearly one of those people. I'm interested to see who those other, guys are going to be for this year, but it's just does it affect my ability to play the game? Absolutely not. Like I'm not playing as Texas. Like, yeah, I guess in my franchise or in my dynasty in 3-4 years down the road, it'd be a cool person to play against. But that is actually before they knew they could get this whole situation done, the gaming community was like, you don't have to put any of them in the game. Because for the people that played Dynasty, 2 years in, it's 75% created players. 4 years in, everybody's new. So it's really just that clunky beginning. I'm glad they're there, but it would not have ruined my experience if they aren't. So again, of all people, I thought it was funny that it was him. It affects nothing for me. The next thing I'll bring up would affect people a little bit more, but this I couldn't help but laugh at this whole story.
Mm-hmm. In the open, you had brought up that this is the game coming out in 5 months. For folks that are still tripped up on that, it should be 3, right? In June, July. So that'd be 3 to 4.
Yeah, I guess my math isn't great. The reveal's in May, and then most people are still clinging to that July 12th release date, which is while not confirmed, that date seems to be popping up more and more.
Right. I'm surprised so many people opted in because there was a lot of talk about this not being enough money. And apparently $500 was no deal. Nobody was going
Yeah,
to take that. But 600, oh shoot. Okay. And a free copy of the game. But really an awesome, development that over 90% of the available players are going to be in the game. I'm
yeah,
intrigued about what the other 10% look like,
yeah,
but should be a great game. Everything I'm hearing is about just how much detail. This was I've watched recently like Madden 12, Madden 13 reveal trailers. And like, I remember they used to interview some of the developers, and there was like 7 different segments, one for every week that they'd post on YouTube. Hey, here is our talk about what we're developing with commentary. What are we doing with gameplay and with presentation? Like now you're seeing that with college football in the way that we haven't seen in over a decade. So really an awesome development. It's clear that they're at least branding this as being the most detailed game in a long time.
right.
And I would be shocked if this isn't like next level, just them leaking, oh, here's Virginia Tech's, backup fight song for when there's a first down, like that little individual detail is going to make all the difference. I'm very excited about this game. And, to be honest, hey, to fans and to the folks close with Arch Manning, you're missing out. This is an opportunity for you to showcase to all your family and friends, like, here's how I look in the video game. A lot of people are going to be bummed that he's not in if he decides to keep out.
Right, because there will be apparently a second window, either when the game comes out or shortly before, that people can opt back in. So he does have time to change his tune. But that, again, doesn't really affect me. If he's going to be the one guy that's not in the game and that's what he wants, because he could be in it next year too. This whole cycle starts over next year. Like if you're somebody, there, like over half the people that opted in the first 24 hours. And you mentioned like plenty of people are like, oh, that's not enough money. But the people saying that weren't the players. It was the other people that were speaking on behalf of these people, And it's like, I don't know, personally for anybody, to me, I equate it to for anyone that's ever been in the acting field that is like an extra in a movie. And
Yeah.
it's like, you live in California, a lot of movies are made in California. If your buddy was like, hey man, they're making this new Adam Sandler movie and they're offering free food and drink and $100 for extras to be at this party, to be in the background for when Adam Sandler, has to yank his daughter out of this party in this movie. Like you go. It's not a big. It doesn't mean I'm worth more than 100. It's like no, dude. It's just like it's a good faith thing. I mean, in the NFL, Madden players get, I think, 15 grand is the Madden likeness thing, but that's collectively bargained from the. I don't know the NBA number. I assume it's more because there's less players, so there's more money to go around. I assume, but it's I don't know. I think somebody thought was for him or him himself. Just thought way too much into like what he was not gonna do. And again, there's still time for him to change his tune.
I mean, you are such an eyesore in the video game. It reminds me of Griffin Murphy otherwise known as Bill Belichick in Madden, who
Hmm.
never wanted. Think about 15 grand Bill Belichick has to do just by clicking a button. I mean, what are you losing, for Arch Manning too? So, considering the potential money he has there. So, Tennessee QB number 12 or whatever his jersey number is.
Yeah.
It just looks weird. And for $600 that he gets, and by the way, another note, not that I'm super privied, but I have friends that, work in movies. A lot of those don't even get paid to be in
Right.
background. $100 would
Hmm.
be great.
Yeah.
They don't even get that. So $600, a free video game, a chance to get paid thousands by, an exterior company. Go for it, man. I don't care if your dad made millions and could give you, free yacht. Take it.
Yeah. Nobody is pretending that $600 is a life-changing amount of money. They're like, you're getting that 600 every year too. So if you opt in next year, that's another six. Maybe it goes up a little based on the price of, how the game worked out for the first year. Like there will be people, that are in the, for whatever reason, they're going to have this mindset. They were in the game this year. And then when 26 comes out, they're like, I did it last year. It was cool. But now I think this. And then maybe they do have to up it a little bit. But again, this is all new. This is all a new situation. This is just the first attempt. So things can change for next year. They could offer more money and offer it to less people next year. Because what they wanted like all the backups and starters of every team. They wanted two deep at every position. That was their goal. So maybe next year they're like, we can go starters and just a few key backups. Like things like that could change. So like the fact that it went out to everybody, that could be not the case next year. You never know.
Yeah. So I had seen, there being some rumors about NCAA Football 14. Part of the reason why they did not continue was obviously because of the player likeness thing, but also because they didn't sell enough copies. And you had showed me different Matt Brown interviews and stuff like that. And he had talked about how the expectation is a significant percentage less of what Madden's going to do. Obviously, even though it's the first college game in a decade. So I am also curious about, like you said, if they start dwindling down, bringing players in, maybe they affect the price a little bit too because of that thing. Maybe. Okay, so basically, uh, give me a minute just to think about.
So I know what you're referring to. I know the story you're referring to. It's a little slightly different than what you're trying to say. I get what you're trying to say. The story, what they were talking about, because now that the football is getting made, there's a lot of people that are like, then where's our basketball game? And the basketball game
Yep,
is the one.
that's it.
That's the one that got canceled because of lack of sales.
Okay,
Like
okay.
the football game was selling 150,000 copies or whatever the number was, and the basketball game was only selling like 50 of that. So they were the story you're talking about not being happy with sales. That was the basketball game. So they're going to need to see an overwhelming desire. I think what they need to do with basketball, I think it's a little too obvious. For 2K, they just need to add like a March Madness mode and everybody be happy.
Exactly.
And I think that's more because that game is simple. You got change the clock, change the rules, because they already have an ability to play they had it in Madden for a little bit, but you get to play through the tournament in a couple of years of 2K's my career mode. So I think for the basketball heads out there, and March Madness is right around the corner. So that would be something. How awesome would that be if like when the new 2K comes out, or maybe they drop it because it's just the cycle of NBA. This new game or the 24 that's still out now in March, drop like the March Madness mode with the tournament. If you make the tournament, you make the game. I think that would be incredible.
Yeah.
Only those 65 teams make it or whatever it is. And every year it's like, bam, here. Because they do that with FIFA. Every 4 years, that FIFA is going to have a World Cup mode in it. Not every FIFA mode does, but obviously March Madness is every year. So you could do it that way as well. I think that would be pretty incredible. While we're talking March Madness, just for a second, I don't want to miss out on this. I want to congratulate the Stetson Hatters and Donnie Jones for winning the ASUN tournament and punching their ticket to March Madness for the first time. For those that don't know or are new here, for about 2 or 3 years, I had the opportunity to do a lot of work at Stetson Athletics with football and basketball. due to issues like everyone knows the story now. My house flooded, and I kind of stepped away from that. But just a great program, both of them. The university is great. All the people I worked with are great. There's still a good amount of people I worked with that are there. So to them, I say congratulations. And while UCF didn't make the tournament, so I'm gonna be pulling for the Hatters, hardcore for however long that ride is. So I did want to make sure I got that in there before we jump to other things.
Yeah, shout out to Stetson. And, we're a couple of years into the NBA's version of March Madness with the play-in tournament. In-season tournament, I mean, if they just wipe that, I don't think they ever will. But I don't think people will be too bummed. But the play-in tournament, I gotta admit, and granted, I'm a Laker fan, so I'm kind of like having to deal with the play-in tournament every year, it seems now. But
Yeah.
I like the feel. We were all clamoring for the NBA feeling a little bit more urgent, and there is the March Madness kind of vibe. And like you said, shout out to Stetson and all that stuff. And this is a great time of year, man. Basketball with March Madness and the NBA playoffs. I mean, we're lucky right now.
I agree. I think the play-in was a slam dunk. No pun intended. The in-season tournament, it's going to take a couple years for people to get it, and then we'll know if people actually, want to do something with that or not. Last big piece of news with the game so far, all of the yearly awards, are not in the game. The Bronco Nagurski, the Walter Payton, the things of that. I'm sorry, Herschel Walker Award.
Was that in NCAA 14? I feel like a lot of them were.
Yes, they all were. These won't be. So EA simply said, look, you're going to win, like in Madden, you win the best running back award, the best quarterback, the best return specialist. The Heisman is in the game, though. So of all the awards to have, you have the main one. And yes, I would have loved to see all the, Jim Thorpe Award back in the game.
But you could just do the mental math. Like, okay, best receiver, the award, that's the Fred Blitnikoff.
Exactly. So, I would love to see, and they might reach a deal by next year. Who knows? But, that is something that's not in the game that will be noticed when you first boot it up. But the more seasons you play, you're not gonna care, I don't think.
Yeah. No, we're just rooting for first of all, an ultimate team that doesn't ravage the game and make it bare bones and dry, but just good presentation, good commentary crew. I think actually we don't even need to wonder about that. Chris Fowler, Kirk Herbstreit, guys like that in the game. And then we want, a game where the recruiting is a lot like NCAA 14. Folks are just saying, for the revamped guys that actually got pulled in to help with this game, just add the new roster, fine tune a few things from the 14 game and just release it. I mean, I think a lot of folks are going to say, we'd love to have that.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing, yes, people like the recruiting system. I think it'll be completely different because you have to factor in NIL, which they've said will have it at presence. Yeah. The transfer portal part of it is the biggest thing because you played the game enough that every once in a while you'd have a player transfer out.
Oh,
every once in a while you'll look at, I got an offensive tackle, a tight end, and a safety that want to transfer in, and
it was always a guy that's not going to make a difference, like a 70 overall backup.
And then when a guy transferred out for you, it was a fourth string sophomore that was a 73 overall wide receiver that was probably not going to see the field in a major way anyway. And if you're LSU, they transfer to Louisiana Lafayette. They tend to stay in the region and then just go down a peg, which I liked how that worked, and there'll be a little bit of that. But I think that'll be the biggest. If there's one thing to not copy paste and just polish, it'll be that part of it. It'll be the transfer portal part.
For sure. Because, I'd say my argument, maybe at the most 50 players in the game would get transferred every year. I think that's an exaggeration. But nowadays in the real college football, what is it, 500 guys? Maybe close to 1,000 transfer.
The average team.
Guys, a third don't even make it to a new team. They just transfer to nothing.
Yeah, exactly. And a third of the average roster nowadays is turned over every year for each team.
Yeah.
So that's, that needs to be reflected in the game to really show the modernization. This was the game 11 years ago. This is college football now. And I think it'll be pretty apparent very quickly if that's the case. So before we get out of here, Nick, what is your? I understand you have some games you're calling this weekend. Why don't you tell us about that real quick before we get out of
Yeah,
here?
so now I'm the voice of UCR, UC Riverside softball, which is really cool. So, shout out to the Highlanders. For folks that maybe recognize that name a little bit, this is a program that knocked out Arizona and Nebraska recently. Like every year, there's always like basketball. Oh man, can you believe the small school upset this team? And that was UCR's moment of glory. So that's what I'm up to. For folks that are tuning in on the channel, we're staying busy with that stuff and just. I'm doing free agency deal right now. In fact, tune in the next couple of days. We'll figure out who wins the next Super Bowl if the season started today. So,
There you go.
hopefully the Eagles for you go pretty far. I
Let's
would be
go.
shocked if they didn't.
Mhm.
And then, and Phil, I would be shocked if you're not working with this with me too. But I'm looking forward to putting college football content out there this coming
100.
year. So, and we've already been
100%.
collaborating, folks. We've
Yes.
already been working on some game plans. So, but luckily they waited till July or June or whenever it comes out until after the softball season. Till
Yeah.
now and then, that's what we're up to.
So where can people listen to your call of these games if they want to?
So actually, just tune into the ESPN app. It's on
There you go.
ESPN Plus. So
Plus,
yeah, very very cool. A little shout out to you, man. If you're bored on a Sunday afternoon and want to watch some softball, so yeah, that's what we're up to.
guys, congratulations, man. I'm very happy for you
Appreciate
to
it.
have that gig. They're lucky to have you, and I'm sure you're happy to be back in that booth. I'm going to be a fan this weekend. The only thing we haven't talked about is baseball is right around the corner. Opening day for major leagues right around the corner. College baseball is in full swing. I'm going to be out at UCF to watch them take on Oklahoma State on Saturday. It'll be the first home series for Big 12 baseball for UCF, so I'm very happy to go check that out. It's going to be it won't be the first game, but it'll be part of the first series. So I'm looking forward to that. And then I'm only about a month away at this point, a little under from the Tortuga season kicking off. And that's when I get a little more busy when I'm working over there with the fellas in Green and Daytona. So I got about a month before that happens. And then every other day I'm working and then running straight to the ballpark. So it's exhausting, but you love it because you love to work in sports. And you try to tell your 14-year-old self, like, hey, man, one day you're going to do this every year consistently for your hometown team. And it's like, whenever it's tiresome and I'm like, oh, I got to get off work. And then I always remind myself, like, you're doing something that people would be very,
Oh
very
yes.
lucky to do otherwise. So while it
Yep.
does get difficult to juggle both jobs, it's something that, I never want to take for granted. And I love working over there. And I've trimmed back a couple things. Like I've said, Stetson, Daytona State haven't done as much. I've shadowed a couple of production things at UCF, which was very interesting. So they know who I am now. Maybe one day I'll fill in for somebody, which would be a dream come true. But for now, it's the day job and the Tortugas, and I'm good having it that way. But
That's so cool. Like if you're anything like me, there's fans from the softball and baseball games that come up and, all the time they'll be like, look, I just love the team and, tell me all about the team. And it's just like the vibe and the atmosphere of going to the ball game and working the ball game. It's second to none, man. And, you picked a great time to be alive. I don't think you could have told your 14-year-old self that you guys – your favorite team, UCF, is going to hop into one of the biggest conferences in the country
right.
seamlessly. It is ridiculous how seamless UCF jumped into the Big 12. Granted, no championship yet, but,
Sure.
that should be on the horizon at some point, and then the Tortugas are good stuff and all that. So, pretty fun time to be alive. And, yep, we'll have more updates for all what we're doing here in the next couple of podcasts for sure.
Absolutely. And that's going to do it for us here on the Phil Talk Sports channel and on the Charger Dude 95 channel. So if you enjoyed me and Nick talking sports, we'd love to have you over on the channel pretty regularly. Like I said, Nick is my most common guest. I'd say
Just because you couldn't find anyone else.
No, it's
I'll
because
take
we
it.
have the best rapport. We have over a decade of talking into microphones to each other, so we
That's
might as
great.
well keep it going. But for everyone watching on either channel, thank you guys for watching. Enjoy March Madness. Enjoy baseball. Enjoy whatever you're doing this weekend. And don't forget to be thankful for whatever that thing might be. So we'll talk to you guys next time and enjoy the weekend.